Happening, and I'm also fascinated by you saying that in fact foreign policy, the focus on foreign policy should be immigration. Do you think that's happening?
I think it's inevitable, and we only mentioned the one number before, but there's a couple of statistics that matter today. So Sydney and Melbourne are Eurasian cities in terms of their ethnic mix.
They've already made
the transition from sort of Anglo-European to Eurasian. Now, I mean this specifically. The number one immigrant group, the largest immigrant community in Sydney are the Chinese-born. The largest immigrant community in Melbourne are the Indian-born. That country that we already are in Melbourne and Sydney and will inevitably become in the medium term across the continent, that country can't think of itself as a European nation. It certainly can't think of itself as an Asian nation either, because it's something in between. It's something better in a weird way, because it shouldn't be forced to choose in foreign affairs between a China and the United States. Or more to the point, if you think about the population story in Melbourne and Sydney, it shouldn't be forced to choose in the event of some sort of, trade or other dispute between China and India. Now, that country that we are becoming has to think more independently. And we need to be thinking probably a little more strategically in the next 10 to 20 years about the volatility of the region. Even in a benign setting, you have to readjust your thinking about what it is to be Australian when Australia doesn't look like the country that came out of the Second World War having shifted its allegiance from Britain to America. We're not that country anymore. And in a strange way, nor should we want to be. Do we still want to be dependent after 26, 27 years of uninterrupted growth, after running a sort of migration program that we've now run for over 70 years that is world's best practice?
But it's that conservative rump that still occupy many other states around the country that still want to hold on to that, which makes it politically very difficult.
Oh, so this is the most perplexing thing as I look at the demography and extrapolate politically. The southeast corner of Australia is already Eurasian. To all intents and purposes. But the north and the west are actually more Anglo relative to Melbourne and Sydney than they've ever been. And in a political sense, that means you've got your leaders trying to juggle two Australias, a modern, cosmopolitan, open Australia and an older Australia. And I don't mean just older in terms of its skin colour. I mean older in terms of an ageing population. Now, those two Australias, you can't let them separate. You literally can't let them separate. This is the other reason why your newly arrived migrant needs to be brought into the Australian contract as quickly as possible, so the rest of the country doesn't get this idea that there is a sort of high-income enclave in a Melbourne or a Sydney. If you think about what Brexit and what the Trump election are about. The Brexit and Trump elections are really a polarisation around an immigration issue, but a polarisation that has a very, very practical manifestation. The sort of east and west coast of the US and a place like London, which are connected to the global economy, are winners even in an Asian century, are still winners in a globalised setting. And the rest of the country where, the sense of opportunity or sense of, possibility for your children isn't as great. There's an ethnic and an income dimension to this story now. And in a place like Australia, the big challenge is to make sure that we have as deep a middle as possible and as many people are still connected to that middle as possible to make this transition to inevitable transition, because your demography is taking you there anyway, to a Eurasian nation, so people don't feel there's a 1/3 in and a 2/3 out.
People have been left behind. George, such a great conversation you started. Thanks so much for joining us.